What is going on, everybody? This is the second half of my show tonight. My first half was dedicated to Week 12 and picking all the games and seeing how that would play out. But now I move forward to the part I've been looking forward to doing for a long time. ESPN has revived an NFL playoff machine, and it is going to be used by me tonight to discuss who I think will make the NFL postseason. And I will be picking every single game from now up until the very end of the season, and in order to predict who I think will reach the 2014-15 NFL playoffs. So let's start off with this week. This week's games, again. First off, quick update from the Chiefs and the Raiders out in Oakland. The Raiders are driving with the ball. They are up 14-3. I believe Kansas City will come back and win that game. But for right now, I have the rest of the season predict. And starting off, we have, of course, Week 12. I already did my previous show. This will be spoiler alerts. I'm going with the Chiefs, the Browns, the Eagles, the Patriots, Packers, Colts, Texans, and Bills, Buccaneers, Seahawks, Rams, Broncos, 49ers, Cowboys, and Saints. Now, that doesn't really change the postseason that much. It does more so in the AFC than the NFC. If this week were to play out just like that, then by the end of the Week 12, by the end of the games on Week 12, the top seed, the AFC seeds would go as follows. The Patriots and the Broncos would be numbers 1 and number 2 respectively and get the byes. The wild card games would feature the 3rd-seeded Steelers hosting the 6th-seeded Browns, and the 4th-seeded Colts hosting the 5th-seeded Chiefs. The NFC would feature the Cardinals and the Packers as 1 and 2, the Eagles hosting the Seahawks 3 versus 6, and the Saints hosting the Cowboys at 4 versus 5. Now moving on, we move on to Week 13. The games, I'm going to predict the Lions to take out the Bears, the Cowboys to take out the Eagles, the Niners to take out the Seahawks, Colts over Redskins, Texans over Titans. I'm going to go actually with the Bills over the Browns, the Ravens over the Chargers, and the Giants to take out the Jaguars. I like the Bengals over the Bucks, the Rams over the Raiders, the Steelers over the Saints, Panthers over the Vikings, the Cardinals to defeat the Atlanta Falcons, the Packers to beat the Patriots in one of probably the marquee game of that weekend, the Chiefs to take out the Denver Broncos, and the New York Jets to lose at home to the Dolphins. With that week in the books, here's how the AFC shapes up, because pretty much everything but Indianapolis and New England change. Because the top seed is Kansas City and the 2nd seed is New England. The 3rd seed is Pittsburgh, the 4th seed is the Colts. The 6th seed is the Bengals, the 5th seed is Denver. They drop all the way to 5th. Now, that's all, of course, this is all speculation. I'm just going off what I think has a really good probability of happening based on what I've seen so far. And the way that I look at it, the NFC is going to be interesting as well, too, because the Cardinals are number 1 and the Cowboys are number 2. The Packers are going to host the 49ers. That'll be, I think, the third straight year they've played in the postseason. And the Saints will be hosting the Detroit Lions. So pretty much right now, Buffalo, Miami are still in contention to AFC East. But the Patriots are clearly the top dog in that division. The Steelers, Bengals, Browns, and Ravens are all alive for the division. The Colts and the Texans are still play-in with only a game separating them in the South. And the AFC West, pretty much it's a two-team race at this point between Denver and Kansas City. In the NFC, Dallas and Philly for the NFC East, and that's about it. The NFC North the same way. Green Bay, Detroit, that's it. NFC South, all four teams have a shot. Tampa's even not out of this division race quite yet. Stunning, but yes, mathematically they're not eliminated. But it's pretty much New Orleans, Carolina, and Atlanta. And the NFC West, again, all the teams pretty much but St. Louis have a shot. But Seattle, according to my projections, they're not even in the playoffs at this point. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I will probably do a video on this too. I'm going to try to use Camtasia for the very first time. I hope I get a chance to use it. Now I move on to Week 14. And this weekend's got some really pivotal divisional games, such as Steelers-Bengals, Saints-Panthers, and even some non-divisional ones, such as Seattle and Philadelphia, Arizona, Kansas City, Buffalo, Denver. A lot of games that can really impact some things. So let's go through them. I predict the Cowboys to take out the Bears, the Bengals to beat the Steelers. Unfortunately, I don't want to predict that. I'm going with the Rams over the Redskins due to their extremely good pass rush that I think could get after RG3. The Giants over the Titans at this point because I know the Giants aren't playing well, but Tennessee's not playing well either, and the Titans will probably get run over. I like the Saints over the Panthers to prove the one game back of 500. Vikings over the Jets. The Dolphins to take out the Ravens in Miami, which actually moves the Steelers from the 6th seed all the way out to, I believe, the 7th seed in the AFC playoffs. The Bengals take over the 4th seed in the AFC West. I like the Colts to actually upset the Browns. I like the Lions over the Buccaneers, Texans over the Jaguars, which actually moves the Houston Texans into the 6th seed. The Broncos to beat the Bills, the Cardinals to defeat the Chiefs, and with that, the whole AFC playoff picture switches as Denver takes over as the number 2 seed. New England takes back the number 1. The Colts and the Bengals are 3rd and 4th. The Chiefs and the Texans are 5 and 6. And we still got 4 games left to predict for this weekend. I like the Seahawks over the Eagles because Mark Sanchez is playing quarterback. And the Eagles should not going to have probably enough around him for them to beat the Seahawks. It's going to be tough. I like San Francisco over Oakland. I like the Patriots over the Chargers and the Packers over the Falcons. So what that does after this week, the AFC picture stays the same from what I just mentioned. But in the NFC, we've got a really interesting contrast here because the Cardinals and the Cowboys are still 1 and 2 in the conference, but Green Bay is now a tiebreaker away from taking over the number 2 seed. They're 10 and 3. New Orleans is number 4 at 6 and 7. The Lions drop the 5th at 9 and 4, and the 49ers take the 6th spot up at 9 and 4 as well. Now, sorry about that little pause there. We approach week 15, and this is another pivotal week because several teams have games that they have to win. There are some big ones going on, like Dallas and Philly, San Francisco, Seattle. You got Cleveland and Cincinnati, which actually means something now because the way the divisions are structured, all 4 teams in the AFC North can still win the division. It's because it's been such a tightly contested division all year long. Now I'm going with the Rams over the Cardinals in a slight upset. I think that they'll take revenge for what happened in Arizona and beat them in St. Louis. I like the Steelers go in Atlanta and knock off the Dirty Birds. I like the Giants over the Redskins. The Patriots to get even with the Miami Dolphins earlier this year. The Chiefs over the Raiders in Oakland, which actually switches Denver and Kansas City and puts KC back as the number 2 seed, and Denver drops to number 5. Indianapolis over Houston, Baltimore over Jacksonville, Green Bay over Buffalo, and at that result, Green Bay actually swaps with Dallas and takes over the number 2 seed while dropping Dallas to the 3rd seed. I like Carolina over Tampa. I like the Browns to actually sweep the Bengals. And that actually helps the Steelers out because it switches the Bengals and Steelers in the AFC North playoff race. The Steelers take over the division lead, and the Bengals ultimately drop to the 6th seed. I like the Lions to take out the Vikings, the Titans over the Jets, the Broncos to beat the Chargers, which again swaps Denver and Kansas City. So Denver's now number 2 and Kansas City number 5. I like Seattle at home over San Francisco, which propels Seattle to the number 6 seed at 9-5. I like Dallas over Philly on the road, which swaps Green Bay and Dallas again. And I like New Orleans to go into Chicago, take out the Bears. So right now, that improves the Saints to 7-7. They're at 500 now, and they're a full 2.5 games ahead of the Panthers in the NFC South. So right now, the way things are looking, if the season were to end after Week 15, the Patriots and Broncos would be 1 and 2. The Colts and the Steelers would be 3rd and 4th. The Chiefs and the Bengals would be 5th and 6th. So Pittsburgh would host Kansas City, and Indy would host Cincinnati. Dallas would be number 2. Arizona would be number 1 in the NFC. Green Bay and New Orleans would be 3rd and 4th. Detroit and Seattle would be 5th and 6th. So Green Bay would host Seattle, which would be a very good game, I think, and New Orleans would host Detroit in a rematch of an earlier game. So right now you can tell that there are still several playoff spots on the line. Particularly, and actually every single division is still in play. Because if you even know the Saints are 7-7, the Panthers are 5-8-1. If the Saints were to lose out the rest of the season, and the Panthers were to win out, they would reclaim the NFC South. But now we got 2 weeks left to go in this season in my projections. And so I got to erase what I just did. All right, let's get on to Week 16. Hang on a second. I think I actually just reset it. Give me a second to catch back up here. Yeah, I just committed a real fail. I just reset it by accident. Sorry about this, people. This should only take another couple of seconds to fix. But you can tell that this has been a really tightly contested year because there's so many playoff races that are on the line. I mean, who'd have thought at this point in the season the Browns would still have a chance to win the division? I mean, I don't really think any of us did. I know I certainly didn't. I mean, the way things are setting up now, it's going to be really interesting down the stretch to see how this finishes out because we still have so much football left to be played, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out. All right, I'm back to where I was. I have every team, I have picked out the way I had it. So now let's move on to week 16 because I think I'm going to reply to this text real quick. Moving to week 16 now, we have a really, really good bunch of games that are going to determine the playoff race. I mean, even ones that are conference, that are non-division and even non-conference. Like, you've got Carolina and Cleveland still one. Even a non-divisional one, like the Monday night one, the Bengals and the Broncos, that's going to be a good one. So let's start off. Titans, I like the Jaguars to beat the Titans in Jacksonville. 49ers over the Chargers. Eagles over the Redskins. Dolphins over the Vikings. I actually look for the Houston Texans to upset the Baltimore Ravens. I'm thinking about that. But honestly, I think the Ravens are probably going to end up taking that game because they're a more consistent team. I like the Lions over the Bears in Chicago. Actually, no, I'm going to switch that. I think in the snow, I think the Chicago Bears actually can upset them because I don't know how Detroit's going to play outdoors. I like Cleveland over Carolina, New Orleans over Atlanta, which would pretty much clinch the NFC South. I like the Packers over the Buccaneers, the Steelers to beat the Chiefs, which will all but seal the AFC North. Pats over the Jets, the Rams over the Giants, Bills over the Raiders, the Cowboys over the Colts, which actually swaps out the top two seeds, and that actually also drops Indianapolis from 3rd to 4th and moves Pittsburgh from 4th to 3rd. And then what that does is you've got Dallas number 1, Green Bay number 2, Arizona, New Orleans at 3 and 4, and Detroit at 5 and 6. I like Arizona to defeat Seattle, and that'll almost eliminate the Seahawks from the playoffs. And then I like the Broncos to take out the Bengals. I think the Bengals are going to have trouble against Denver's defense because their pass rush in Denver is very good, and Andy Dalton's been hit quite a bit, and also because of the fact that Dalton in these kind of games has laid an egg in his career. And also Peyton Manning at the end of the season, he's going to be playing to get the top seed in the AFC. He's going to be trying his hardest. But at this point, he really couldn't do anything about it because New England's got 12 wins and Denver's only got 11. And that tiebreaker will always be there between them that Denver lost to New England. But it actually helps the Dolphins, too, because it improves them to 9 and 6 in the AFC South. Or in the AFC East, I should say. So pretty much that all but wraps up the division for the Steelers. In fact, I'm actually going to project it out. If the Steelers were to lose at home to the Bengals, and the Ravens beat the Browns, that would mean the Ravens win the division, the Steelers get the 6th seed. If the Browns were to win it, that means the Browns would get the division, the Steelers would get the 6th seed. But I'm not quite sure that's going to happen. So let's project this out. Carolina, Atlanta at the end of the season, you know what? I'm going with the Dirty Birds. I think at home they'll want to get a final win to end their season, so they won't be too disappointed. I like the Ravens over the Browns. I just think that they're just a slightly better team. I think Dallas will, having won the NFC East, I don't know if they'll play their starters because of wanting to not go to Green Bay if they go to the NFC title game. So I'm going to say Dallas will play their starters and try to beat Washington. I like Indianapolis over Tennessee, Green Bay over Detroit, which would clinch the NFC North. It would bump San Francisco to the 5th seed and Detroit down to the 6th seed. Houston over Jacksonville, Kansas City over San Diego. I like the Dolphins over the Jets. I like the Vikings to defeat the Chicago Bears. I like the Patriots over the Bills. I like the Eagles to take out the Giants. And if the Eagles win and the Cardinals beat the 49ers, I actually know what the Eagles are pretty much eliminated from the playoff contention at this point. The Steelers defeating the Bengals gives them the 3rd seed and the Miami Dolphins in the first round of the playoffs, which will be really interesting because Quamansland, I don't know if any of you guys follow him, he does videos, Spreaker shows me sometimes. He's the Dragon Ball Z guy. You should look up his channel on YouTube. He got many great videos. He's a Dolphins fan, and I'm a Steeler fan. That'd be interesting to see. I think the Saints will play. I don't know if the Saints will play their starters against the Bucs. I think they'll rest them because of the fact that, you know, they've already gotten as high of a seeding as they're going to get, and they've won the division, so it makes no sense to play them. Broncos over the Raiders to ensure that they win the division. I like the 49ers over the Cardinals. Which actually would swap the division and give the 49ers the NFC West title. As difficult as it seems, but I just think that some of the games are going to be really tough for Drew Stanton to find a way to win. Oh, earlier I made a mistake. Whenever I reset, I accidentally clicked Atlanta to beat the Falcons. That was Atlanta to beat the Cardinals, my mistake. I have Arizona still winning the NFC West. Arizona winning the NFC West, and San Francisco right now will be the 5th seed in the NFC playoff picture. And then finally, Seattle over St. Louis in the final regular season game. Here's how James Krasnerick believes the NFL season will end. The top seed in the AFC will be the New England Patriots. 13-3 right now. They're on a roll. They got a pretty simple remaining schedule. They should be just fine. Denver, number 2 seed at 12-4. KC's going to give them a struggle to win for the rest of the way, but I believe Denver's got more offense and a little bit better of a pass rush. Pittsburgh gets the 3rd seed because they got a lot of home games, and the one of the road games at Atlanta is very winnable. Indianapolis Colts, and besides, teams going into Pittsburgh and after a lot of trouble playing against that Steeler team in Pittsburgh. 4th seeded Colts, 11-5, taking on the 5th seeded Chiefs at 11-5, a rematch of last year's playoffs. And the Steelers will host the Miami Dolphins. I believe the Steelers will host the Miami Dolphins in the first round of the playoffs. And now for the NFC. The top seeds are Dallas and Green Bay, numbers 1 and 2. The 3rd seed Arizona and the 4th seed New Orleans. I like the 5th seed to be the 49ers and the 6th seed to be the Seattle Seahawks. So after all the great work Detroit puts in, I still think they're going to fall just shy of the playoffs. As good of a team as they are. Now, I kind of want to see how right I am at the end of the season. There's always room for improvement, but I actually got to go back and check and make sure I picked all their games right whenever I accidentally reset it. I did pick them to lose against New England. I picked them to beat the Bears. I picked them to beat the Buccaneers. I picked them to beat the Vikings. But I predicted that the Bears in Chicago, I think, would trip them up, and that losing and beating Green Bay and Green Bay is going to be extremely tough to do. So right now, here's the way the playoffs are set. We have Arizona, New Orleans would host Seattle and San Francisco respectively. Pittsburgh and Indy would host Miami and Kansas City respectively. I see that playing out like this. I think the Steelers beat the Dolphins at home. I think it's going to be really tough for the Dolphins to come into Pittsburgh in the cold weather and beat the Steelers, who I believe are a much better team than they were at this time last year when they lost the Dolphins. I like the Colts to defeat the Chiefs again. I think that it's still a tough ask for Kansas City to beat the Colts on the road in Indy because Andrew Luck is such a dynamic quarterback and they got so many weapons. In the NFC, give me the Cardinals to... I actually think Seattle's going to go into Arizona and beat the Cardinals. I do. I think that Drew Stanton might hold them back just enough to allow Seattle to escape and set up a rematch with Dallas. I like New Orleans to beat San Francisco in an upset. I think New Orleans will claw their way back and prove that they may be 8-8 right now, But guess what? They're as good as any team out there, especially with Drew Brees. So that would send the Saints to Green Bay and the Seahawks to Dallas. I think the Broncos will beat the Steelers. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. I know that there's only like a one-game difference between the two teams, and Pittsburgh's offense right now this year, in terms of points, is not terribly behind Denver's. I mean, if you look at offensive standings right now, the Steelers have actually scored only 5 fewer points than the Broncos this year. And you look at other offensive rankings, the Steelers are number 1 in yards this year. The Broncos are fourth. And in terms of a lot of other statistics, the Steelers have actually committed almost as few turnovers as the Broncos. So they've been very good. The defense will get you, and that's why Denver will win that game, and because it's in Denver. That would send the Colts to New England in a rematch of last year, and to be honest, I see absolutely no way the Colts go to New England and beat them. In the NFC, Seattle could upset Dallas, and I actually think they can. But right now, I think that Seattle has just enough to beat Dallas, especially if they're able to get after Tony Romo and avoid a repeat of performance of what happened in Seattle, and I think they'll do that. And then you have New Orleans, who I believe will lose to Green Bay and Green Bay. New Orleans beating San Francisco in the Superdome and playing the Packers on the road in Lambeau are two completely different stories. That would send the Packers to the NFC title game to take on the Seahawks, and the Broncos to Foxborough to take on the Patriots. So we are going to get the Super Bowl matchup that everybody wants, Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady, old versus new. It's going to be one of those things where it's an absolute quarterback duel. And if it does boil down to that, and I have to pick between Rodgers and Brady, I hope like hell Rodgers beats him. Actually, you know what? I hope like hell Brady beats him. You know what? I don't care. I hope for a great game. But that's all I have to say on that. Remember, here's how I predict the standings and the divisions will go. AFC East from top to bottom. Pats 13-3, Dolphins 10-6. We got the Bills, who I believe will be 9-7 against the Jets, who are 8-8 against the Jets, who are 2-14. We have the Steelers 11-5, Ravens 10-6, Cleveland 9-7, and the Bengals is 8-7-1. I think they're going to falter down the stretch. I do. AFC West, Denver, Kansas City, San Diego, Oakland. Oakland does go winless. Colts, Texans, Titans, Jaguars. And the NFC East, Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, Redskins. NFC North, Packers, Lions, Vikings, Bears. NFC South, Saints, Panthers, Falcons, Bucks. NFC West, Cardinals, 49ers, Seahawks, Rams. Take care and have a good one, everybody.